In the 1990s, Dr. Cicoria was at an outdoor party next to a lake in New York. He went to a phone booth, picked up the receiver, was struck by lightning, died for what he explains to be 15 or 20 minutes, was CPR'd, reconnected with his body, and went on to return to work. He noticed that he had acquired a desire to explore classic piano music, which led him to rejoin with a piano teacher he had early in life, where he explains he attempted to play piano for about a year and then just went on with his normal life. This is an account of his experience in his own words, followed by a short piano segment of a song that he composed himself. I find it interesting, and I agree with the theory that narrative death is not an emergency brake. It is a smooth shift to an alternate timeline that was there all along. Tony describes the experience as learning and then returning and then learning. I see it more as the potential for millions of timelines to be followed. This is evident in day-to-day life. Decisions we make, big and small, result in major changes down the road. 6 months, a year later, life is completely different. That timeline was there for the taking. Have a good week, everyone.
I'm Dr. Tony Cicoria. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, still practicing, and I grew up in upstate New York. In 1994, third week in August, my wife had a party, which she has every year, for her family, because there's so many people with birthdays in August, and so we would have a communal birthday party. This year, she decided to have it at the Sleepy Hollow Lake in Athens, New York. And so I had one of the other guys come over and watch the barbecue while I walked around the building, and there was a payphone on the other side of this pavilion. And I was standing at the payphone, and I was trying to call my mom, and I, put in her number and let it ring 5 or 6 times, and she never picked up. And so I said, well, I'll try again later. What I was not aware of is that a huge thunderhead had formed over the lake, and it was completely unbeknownst to me. And when I had the phone next to my ear and I was starting to take it away to hang it up, suddenly I saw this huge flash of light comes out of the phone and hits me in the face, and I hear this incredibly loud crack. And it just threw me back like a rag doll. I went flying backwards and dropped the phone and just took off going backwards. And a strange thing happened as this was going on was I knew I had been hit by lightning. I saw it, I heard it, and I knew I'd been thrown backwards, but suddenly had this strange sensation of moving forwards. And I was very confused by it. And I remembered standing there going, I don't understand. I know I got hit. I know I got thrown back. And so why am I standing here and wondering what just happened? As I was standing there, all of a sudden, I hear my mother-in-law screaming, and she's at the top of the stairs. I'm at the bottom. And she starts running down the stairs right at me, and And I thought, this can't be good. When your mother-in-law is screaming and running at you, something bad's going to happen. And as she was coming down the stairs, I realized that she's not looking at me. She's looking off to her left. And I thought, what the hell is going on? I look at the phone and the phone is dangling. And as she gets down to the right where I was, it was like I didn't exist. And she just took off to her left. And I thought, oh, I'm going to follow her. And as I took off to follow her, I went probably 3 or 4 steps. And all of a sudden, I was confronted with myself on the ground. And I remember looking down at this body and I thought, oh shit, I'm dead. It was absolutely seamless. And the only thing I could think of was that when I had that sensation of moving forward as my body was going backwards, that was my spirit separating from the body. And so here I am standing there. I'm right at the head of this body, and I'm looking down and realizing that I'm dead. I'm not in that body, and I get this sudden realization that, Jesus, I'm thinking just like I normally would. I'm thinking in the same vernacular that I would normally think. And it came to me that whoever I am, I always am. And this body is nothing but an empty shell that my spirit spent some time in. But now I'm off on my own. All of a sudden, I realized that my legs are starting to dissolve. And I thought, holy crap, what is happening? And as I was going up the stairs, my form dissolved. I was nothing more than a ball of energy. By the time I got to the top of the stairs, that's all I was. I said, the heck with this. I just went right through the wall. And when I got through the other side of that wall, my wife was sitting on a chair and she was painting children's faces. She had no idea what had happened. And I continued. And I went diagonally through that room. And I had the realization that, my family would be fine without me. And as I got to the roof line, I went through the roof and things really started to change at that point. I remember lying there going, no, I don't want to come back. Don't make me do this. I loved where I was going. I want to complete that. But I was just given the intuition that it's not my decision and you're back. And I remembered I'm lying there in this body now and my face had a burn on it where the lightning hit me and when it came out my foot, and they both hurt like crazy. I didn't want to go from absolute bliss to absolute pain. What kind of a crazy person wants to have that? Our spirit lives on. It doesn't die when our body does. To know that there is something else that occurs after death is the greatest gift that anyone could ever give me. And to know that there is a force of absolute love and peace that underlies everything and makes up everything. And I remembered this overwhelming thought of, well, what did this mean? How did I go through this whole episode and nothing has really changed, and I'm going to go back to work in this next week. But what I didn't realize that I was changed. And the first thing that I noticed was that I had this insatiable desire to hear classical piano music, which was a big departure for me. I was a kid of the 60s. I liked rock and roll, and there really wasn't much of anything else. My mother had made me study piano for a year when I was 7 years old, And I dutifully did that under life threat. And at the end of the year, I decided I'm not going to do this again. So I went off and did other things. And one of the first calls I got was from a friend of mine at the State University of New York in Oneonta, who's the head of the music department there, Carlton Clay. And Carlton calls me and says, I read this story in the New Yorker and I'd like to have you come and teach a class. And I thought, oh, that'd be fun. I'll do that. And then the next week he calls back and he says, geez, I'm getting an awful lot of calls about this whole event. He said, would you also play the music for the class? And I thought, sure, I could probably do that. And then I didn't hear anything for a short period of time. It must have been about a month. And he calls back again and he says, geez, he said, the interest in this story is really incredible. And he said, would you consider doing a concert? And I said, no. I said, I don't have the faintest idea how to do something like that. I'm not prepared for it. I don't think I can do it. And he talks me into it. And I called my piano teacher, Sandy, and I said, Sandy, I said, I got myself into a real jam here. And I said, what can you do to help me? And she said, well, I'll help you do it. She said, but you're going to have to spend 3 or 4 hours a day getting ready for this. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so she would meet with me every day and we would go up to the performing arts theater at the State University. And she made me walk in, made me learn how to play the music in front of people. And we went through the whole thing from start to finish. I think that the music has continued on a course of its own, and the music continues to download into my brain. I don't know where it comes from. In the spiritual realm, there's not that contrast. There's not those catalysts that cause change and cause us to learn. And part of our spiritual existence is to learn to become a higher spiritual form.